Number 10. The Whiskey Drinking Bull. There are more than 250 recognised breeds of cattle throughout the world, but today we talk about the ones of considerable size that really made an impression. Starting off our list of the biggest bulls in the world is the Whiskey Drinking Bull from India. He's reportedly the biggest and most valuable in the entire country. What kind of bull is he? The bull is a Murrah bull named Sultan, and he stands 5 feet and 11 inches tall and weighs 3,300 pounds, over double the typical weight of your average Murrah bull. According to his owners, he eats 33 pounds of apples, 44 pounds of carrots, 22 pounds of grains, and 22 pounds of green leaves every single day. That's a lot of food for one bull. His owners also take care of him like he's royalty, taking him for walks and giving him a bath at least twice a day. But why is this bull so valuable? The answer is because his love juice is sold to almost every state in India, with a single dose being sold for around $5. In a single year, Sultan's owners made over $120,000 on selling the bull's sperm. His owner claims Sultan is worth $2.5 million. But most surprising of all is that Sultan apparently has a taste for whiskey. He's allowed to have a single drink of his favourite whiskey every single night. This bull lives a better life than most people. Number 9. Albert the Bull. Albert is in fact the largest bull on the face of the earth. He's been around for a long time, since 1964. This bull is 28 feet tall and has a 15-foot span between his horns. Of course, the bull isn't technically alive, but is still the biggest in the world and deserves a place on this list. I had you, didn't I? Roughly 20,000 visitors come to check out Albert every year. The massive bull was actually built as a replica of a Hereford bull, but he's 9 times larger than the real deal. He's located in western Iowa and is one of the best roadside attractions in the USA. Cow weighs 45 tons, and most of him is solid concrete. He won't be making babies anytime soon, but he is kind of famous, even being a question on an episode of Jeopardy! Albert was named after Albert Cruz, who was a past president of the local bank and responsible for launching an annual local beef promotion named Operation T-Bone. Don't get that confused with Operation Pork Chop, a local pork industry drive that lacks the vision to build a massive talking pig statue to promote itself. The only thing that's changed about Albert in the last 50 years is that he was repainted to have brown eyes instead of the original blue eyes he was first created with, as farmers were complaining that cows don't actually have blue eyes. Hey, real fast, if you're new to the channel, welcome! Give this video a like and hit that subscribe button for more videos like these. Number 8. Britain's biggest bull. The largest bull in Britain is a bulky Barnsford, and he is an absolute beast. This bull is so massive that 45,000 Big Mac burgers could be made from his meat. According to a report from the Mirror, he stands 7 feet tall and has roughly the same weight as an adult hippopotamus. Whoa! He tips the scales at a ridiculous 4,400 pounds. That's over twice the size of an average bull in Britain. But despite bulky Barnsford's monstrous appearance, his owner, a farmer from Stockport, claims that this hulk is actually a very gentle soul. He apparently likes nothing more than to be pampered and surrounded by a field full of lady cows. He's fathered at least 50 calves on the farm where he lives and 100 more through artificial insemination. Oh yeah, and it took only a year for Bulky to have that many children. He is truly the definition of a stud. But what you might be surprised to know is that Bulky does not get any special treatment when it comes to food. He has all the grass he can eat out in his fields, and once a day he gets around 15 pounds of concentrate. But it's the same diet as all the other bulls. He just so happens to be ridiculously huge, and it seems like he's still growing. Number 7. The longest horns. They say everything is bigger in Texas, and there is definitely some truth to that. For example, take the bull named Cowboy Tough Chex, who has the longest horns ever recorded on a Texas longhorn bull. This bull might not be the largest overall in terms of his body, but his horns are pretty much biblical in their size. From tip to tip, the horns on this bull are 101 inches, or just about 8.5 feet. To give you a quick comparison, that's longer than any basketball player is tall in the NBA. According to the report from Newsweek, Chex was originally from Oklahoma, and he sold recently for $165,000 to a breeding facility in Texas. Even though he's not abnormally large, the record length of his horns will make him an extremely desirable bull for breeders all across the country. That steep price tag will probably be paid off within just a few years by selling the bull's services for making little, or I guess big, longhorn babies. Number 6. Konina Bull. Remember at the beginning when I said there are more than 250 recognised breeds of cattle? A lot of people don't realise that there are that many different breeds of cow, just as there are as many different breeds of horse. Not all cows are created equally though. Some are hairy, some are tall, and some are far larger than others. The largest breed of cow in the world is the Konina. The average Konina cow weighs roughly 2,222 pounds, while a bull can weigh up to 2,800 pounds. What's really unique about the Konina cows, beside the hefty stature, is that they are porcelain white. These are the whitest cows you will ever find, and yes, they think mayonnaise is too spicy. But aside from just being extremely pale, Konina cows are also super buff. You might notice that a lot of the largest bulls in the world are indeed from this specific breed, and you'll also notice a similarity in that they all have extremely well-defined muscles. Most Konina bulls could probably outbox Mike Tyson. In Roman times of 300 to 200 BC, the breed was used mainly for draft and sacrificial purposes. With the coming into the Middle Ages, the times of Christianity, it became more practical. The medieval peasants simply could not afford to keep an animal that didn't work well, and those animals that could not conform were slaughtered. This practice may have been one of the first, albeit rustic, breeding programs. The legacy of this breeding program is consistent with the breed, their distinctively developed legs and hard hooves, and their endurance qualities and docility. Number 5. The world's shortest bull. We're going to take a slight detour real quick, because we couldn't talk about the biggest and heftiest bulls in the world without at least mentioning Humphrey, the shortest bull ever to live. This is obviously the complete opposite, but just look at Humphrey, he's ridiculously adorable. Bulls are obviously supposed to be huge and heavy, but something happened that made Humphrey really small. He's basically pocket-sized. This bull only stands 26.6 inches high, barely above the average person's knees. Humphrey was even featured in the 2020 Guinness World Records as one of the star entries. Humphrey is a type of cow breed known as a miniature zebu, so it's not totally surprising that he's tiny. His parents only stood 35.5 inches and 32.25 inches. And even though Humphrey is so small, he still has a normal life for a bull. He hangs out on the farm, the other animals seem okay with him, and the dogs on the farm treat him just like one of their own. Don't you want one? Number 4. The Adam and Adam of bulls. Here's a revelation that might be surprising. A geneticist from Pennsylvania State University who specializes in studying dairy cows has recently unveiled that almost all the dairy cows in the United States have descended through the years from just 2 giant bulls. It's unclear exactly just how big these bulls were, but it's safe to say that they must have been massive for all the other cows in the country to be traced back to them. According to the researchers from Penn State, there were 2 huge bulls born around the 1950s named Round Oak Ragapple Elevation and Pawnee Farm Arlinda Chief. And yes, those are completely preposterous names for bulls, but they must have been the most impressive specimens at the time, because almost every dairy cow in the United States can be linked back to one of them. This isn't detrimental to society or anything, it's just kind of fascinating. Number 3. Knickers the cow. Knickers the cow is a colossal animal. In fact, this Australian cow is so large that he was unable to be slaughtered. He's not technically a bull, seeing how he's been neutered. That makes him a steer, but he is still a giant male bovine that stands about 6 feet and 4 inches tall. He's only slightly shorter than the bull who holds the world record in Italy. However, Knickers is believed to be the biggest steer in all of Australia. But to really understand how much larger he is than the other cows, you really have to look at him in the field. It's like the opposite of trying to find Waldo. He towers above the other cows and sticks out like a sore thumb. And while most people probably don't care about a giant cow, the world seems to go crazy over Knickers. There have been reports from the BBC, CNN, USA Today, and pretty much every other newspaper on Earth. He's famous. And of course, with so much attention came the conspiracy theories. People were screaming about hormones, unnatural gene editing, the end of mankind, and all brands of other craziness. But according to the owner of the cow, it's really just a random act of nature that made Knickers so big. Number 2. Daniel the bovine. Daniel is a giant bovine and one of the tallest cows in the world. He is a typical Holstein cow, black and white just like you'd expect. Only, he stands almost 6.5 feet tall and weighs over 2,300 pounds. That's a seriously hefty beast. Daniel the bovine eats around 100 pounds of hay and 15 pounds of grain every day. He also drinks roughly 100 gallons of water and produces 150 pounds of cow poop, the latter of which is pretty gross. Daniel lives in California and according to his owner was noticeably large at about 6 months old while he was still being bottle fed. By the end of 6 months, Daniel was so large that it was hard to feed him with the bottle. As of the time of this story, Daniel has been measured for Guinness World Records and the owners were eagerly awaiting the results. If you're curious as to which cow owned the previous record for being the tallest in the world, it was Blossom. Blossom the cow stood at 6 feet and 2 inches tall, but unfortunately died in May of 2015. Number 1. Donetto the Konina bull. It's time to meet the largest bull in history. His name was Donetto, and he was exhibited at the Arezzo show in Italy back in 1955. He was also a monster of a bull. Sources put his weight at between 3,840 and 3,920 pounds. That's a lot, even for a Konina bull. There have been some pretty hefty bulls since then that have come close, but nobody has broken this record. Unfortunately, because Donetto came from the 50s in Italy, there are not a lot of official documents citing who bred the bull, what happened to him after he was presented, or if he fathered any oversized children. We can only assume that he was cooked into 10,000 delicious Italian meatballs. Number 10. The Black Horse. Horses are some of the most expensive animals a person can buy, but one horse in particular is more expensive than most, the legendary Black Stallion. I'm talking about a breed of horse known as Frisian horses, which were actually used in medieval times when knights charged into battle. They originated in the northern parts of the Netherlands and are black as the darkest night. But even though this is such a majestic beast, it's believed that during World War I there were only 3 Frisian stallions left in the world that were available to breed. Since then, their numbers have increased, but they have only gotten more and more expensive. If you're wanting to purchase one of these grandiose stallions, you're looking at paying upwards of $25,000 per horse. However, you can pay even more depending on factors like personality and physical traits. For example, if you get a Frisian horse that has been trained already, you're looking at an extra 10 to 20%. And if you're picking up a registered sport horse for racing, you can actually double or even triple the price. These horses are definitely gorgeous, but they can really break the bank. Some of the top horses in this breed can even go for upwards of $150,000. Number 9. The Croc Skin Handbag. Move down. Some of the most expensive handbags, shoes and belts that a person can buy are crafted from crocodile skin. While this is extremely frowned upon in a lot of places in the world, it's still big business. It's such big business that the most expensive crocodile handbag was recently purchased by David Beckham for $379,000 at an auction. The handbag came from a white Himalaya Niloticus crocodile, which in itself is insanely rare. These are not the type of crocodiles that you typically see wandering through the swampy regions of the United States. The crocodile is pure white, resembling the snow of the Himalayan mountains. This is where it gets its name from. But according to CNBC, the handbag had even more to it than just rare crocodile skin. It was completed with over 240 diamonds, 18 karat gold, and a whole lot of style. And while most of the population frowns on any kind of accessory made from the skin of an animal, when you have millions of dollars to throw away on nothing, it's not really of any consequence to you. What do you think about a purse like this? Is it wrong? Is it beautiful? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe for more videos like these. Number 8. The Cloned Dog. Imagine if you could bring your pet back from the dead. Actually, you don't have to imagine anymore, because this is 100% possible. Back in 2008, Edgar and Nina Otto were devastated when their yellow Labrador died of cancer. Absolutely destroyed by the death of their dog, they sought out a cloning service to bring their dog back to life. It ended up being one of the most expensive pets ever created, and indeed one of the only pets ever created artificially. According to Mrs. Otto herself, they would have paid any amount of money to recreate their beloved dog. But just how in the world did this happen? Well, a firm in San Francisco called BioArts teamed up with the Biotech Research Foundation in South Korea, and together they helped clone a version of the deceased Sir Lancelot, making him the first cloned dog, born in 2009. It cost about $155,000. But what's really strange about this is that the cloning service in America actually suspended their commercial cloning service shortly after Sir Lancelot Encore, the name of the Otto's new dog, was created. The process can still be completed in South Korea, but it's not currently operating in North America. The animal cloning process involved injecting the DNA of the original dead animal into the egg of a surrogate dog. And as you can already tell from the Otto family's experience, it really does work. Number 7. The $1 Million Cow. If you thought dogs and horses were expensive, just wait until you meet the most expensive cow on the planet. Back in 2009, at the annual Royal Agricultural Winter Fair in Toronto, a 3-year-old cow named Missy was sold for $1.2 million. This is an insane amount of money to spend on any cow, and yet it definitely happened. The cow was bred in the province of PEI and she was a genetic goldmine. Apparently, the actual worth of Missy is far more than what she was bought for, and it's all because of her embryos and her perfect genetic resume. Farmers from all over the world will pay an insane amount of money to get their hands on Missy's embryos for future breeding. The man who originally bred Missy claims that she could have as many as 75 babies over the course of her entire life. But what's really interesting about the sale is that Missy was purchased by two different buyers from the United States and Denmark, and even though they have the rights to all her embryos, Missy will continue living in Canada, thereby negating any possible stress that could come from moving her. Number 6. The Ashura cat. Most people probably didn't pay any money for their cat or cats. Most cats are barn cats, stray cats, or cats that have been adopted from your local animal shelter. However, those with a lot more cash to burn are able to purchase some seriously pure cats. One of the most expensive of all is a hybrid cat known as the Ashura. This hybrid is a cross between an African serval, an Asian leopard cat, and an ordinary domestic house cat. But wait a minute, what I just said isn't actually true. The Ashura cat was a massive scam undertaken by a company known as Lifestyle Pets. After selling their unique hybrid cats for over $125,000, some breeders got suspicious and did DNA testing. The tests revealed that these cats were simply savanna cats, ordinary hybrids that have been around for a long time, created by mixing servals with domestic cats. An ordinary savanna cat costs significantly less than what was being charged by Lifestyle Pets. These guys basically purchased ordinary cats and then upsold them under a new name to wealthy buyers, resulting in one of the biggest cat controversies of the century. Number 5. The dog with lion blood. Tibetan Mastiff dogs are huge and furry beasts. However, they're not typically that expensive. Of course, except for the one Tibetan Mastiff that was recently purchased by a Chinese businessman from $1.9 million. As of right now, this is the most expensive dog ever sold. The man who purchased the dog is a property developer who preferred not to be named by local Chinese media. According to the New York Post, prices for Tibetan Mastiffs have recently skyrocketed in China as the ultra-rich use them for status symbols, almost like buying a fancy car or a big house. Other Tibetan Mastiffs have been sold for up to $968,000. But these Mastiffs are a little different. These ones have unique hair. The puppy that sold for nearly $2 million had golden hair that made it look especially like a lion, while others that are sold for high prices have a dark red coat. The dog's breeder even claims that Mastiffs have lion blood, and that's why they are so desirable for the super wealthy Chinese businessmen. Some have compared the Tibetan Mastiff's rarity to that of the panda bear. Number 4. The most expensive fish. Imagine going to the store and paying almost $1 million for a tuna. You would never do such a thing. And yet, somebody did. A 593-pound bluefish tuna was recently sold at a fish market in Tokyo for an incredible amount of money. The bluefin tuna was caught off the coast of Japan, and it was presented at the first fish auction of the year, making a huge splash in the local fishing community. Here's a bit of background on this expensive fish. Bluefin tuna is prized by sushi eaters because it has red and meaty flesh. However, the supply of bluefin tuna has been dramatically decreased over the years because of overfishing. As recently as 2009, the bluefin tuna was labelled an endangered species. And you wouldn't believe it, Japan actually consumes 80% of all the bluefin tuna in the world, meaning they really don't have anyone else but themselves to blame for the dramatic lack of the fish. But in any case, because of the bluefin tuna's immense rarity now, just one fish can cost nearly $1 million. The fish I was talking about in the beginning was purchased for $736,000. Number 3. The most expensive horse ever. We talked a bit earlier about a really expensive breed of horse known as Frisian horses. And while yes, these black stallions do go for a crazy amount of money, the most expensive animal ever sold is actually a horse named the Green Monkey, who was purchased at an auction for $16 million. It was the most expensive horse ever sold. This horse was worth more than most neighborhoods. The reason the horse was so expensive was that he ran an eighth of a mile in just 9.8 seconds, causing an insane bidding war. What's really crazy is that the horse went on to be a huge failure. It finished one race in third place, lost a bunch of other times after that, and was very quickly retired. His entire earnings throughout all his races only amounted to $10,440. However, the horse did sire at least 46 foals, with several of them going on to be racing champions. And unfortunately for the Green Monkey, he ended up being euthanized at the young age of just 14. Number 2. The stag beetle. We've been talking a lot about large animals, and I think it's time we focus on a rather expensive insect. It turns out that the stag beetle is the most expensive insect on the entire planet. This beetle is black with huge red antlers and a chestnut brown wing case, and it costs about $89,000 to buy. That's because the insect is rare, it's incredibly strange, and it's one of the longest insects in the world, with a range of between 2 and 3 inches. Males have giant mandibles or antlers at the front of their faces that they use to fight and to pick up lady beetles. Unfortunately, these majestic and beautiful insects are considered to be endangered. This is one of the reasons for the insane price tag on them. They have been classified as a protected species. A dramatic loss of habitat has resulted in their steady decline, and now they are mainly seen inside the collections of very wealthy bug enthusiasts. Number 1. The real cost of a tiger. If you've ever thought about buying a tiger or another wild cat, you probably haven't taken all the variables into consideration. Strangely, big cats don't actually cost that much money. For some completely insane reason, you can pick up a tiger cub for about $2,500. That's less than a 10-year-old used car. Of course, this also depends on where you live, as somewhere like Texas obviously has a huge abundance of tiger cubs for sale. But now you have to take a look at the real costs. Not only is caring an issue, with cats growing bigger and bigger by the day and also more dangerous, but there is the cost of food to think about. Also land. For example, you need at least 5 acres for a big cat, and that could set you back about $75,000 per acre. Then you need a giant fence to house your cat inside of, which can cost up to $8,000 assuming you only have those 5 acres. Next, you need a cage, which is going to cost you another $7,500. Then you need federal permits, you need a license, and you need insurance, and all of these things will cost anywhere from $1,000 to $14,000 a year. And don't forget about food, which can be more than $10,000 per year. This is all according to Big Cat Rescue, who knows this stuff because they have over 100 big cats on their property. Basically, a tiger or another big cat is a seriously expensive endeavour, and dangerous. Number 10. Ditching friends. A humpback whale recently got into some trouble when it was ditched by its jerk friends and abandoned to deal with a whole lot of angry crocodiles. This happened in Australia's Northern Territory, and it's the first time that a humpback whale ever swam the wrong way and ended up in the Australian river filled with crocs. The stranded whale was in a group of 3 friends spotted by researchers that were swimming through the East Alligator River. This river connects Kakadu National Park with the sea, and it's notoriously murky and dangerous. There are at least 100 miles that are ripe with hungry crocodiles who sit patiently, waiting to ambush anything tasty looking that gets too close. But here's where the jerk whales come in. The humpback whales were obviously a little lost, and 2 of them realised it. 2 of the whales made a U-turn and headed back to sea, but they left their friend behind. The lone whale continued swimming for miles and miles, completely lost without its friends. This is obviously atrocious behaviour for humpback whales, and if not for the fact that the whale was estimated to be about 52 feet in length, it probably would have ended up being dinner for the crocodiles. Of course, since the whale was in uncharted waters, it could have also gotten stranded on a shallow shore where the crocodiles certainly would have picked it apart. In the end, marine biology experts had to get together to save the whale themselves since it was abandoned by its mean friends. Let this be a lesson not to hang out with humpback whales, they might leave you behind. Number 9. Bully mountain lion. Mountain lions are some of the biggest jerks ever, especially if you're a dog. When a man named Kirk Fetter left his puppy alone outside in El Dorado County, it became the ideal victim for a local terrorizing mountain lion. Kirk was asleep inside when he heard the ruckus and actually had to run outside in nothing but his underwear in order to save his poor dog from the cruel grip of the mountain lion. The dog's name was Tiki, and she was in mortal danger because of the big and ferocious cat. By the time Kirk bust out of the house and saw what was going on, the mountain lion had Tiki's entire head in its mouth, ready to deliver the killing crunch. But thinking fast, Kirk raced to the dog's rescue, scared the mountain lion away, and went quickly to his dog to make sure she was okay. In the end, Tiki had a few small puncture wounds on her head and a light cut on her stomach, but she would survive. Because this happened in a rural town, Kirk had to wait until the morning to take his dog to the vet, but she made a full recovery. And from now on, Tiki probably won't be sleeping on the balcony by herself. Have you ever had any scary experience with a wild animal? What did you do? What happened? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. We've got more videos coming up. Number 8. The cowbird. It's hard to imagine a bigger jerk of a bird than the cowbird. But unlike other birds that are jerks to humans like magpies and seagulls, cowbirds are jerks to other birds. They are something known as a brood parasite, and they have a very nasty habit of laying their eggs inside the nests of other bird species. This may just sound like neighbourly behaviour, but it's actually quite rude. The female cowbird watches other birds in the area, just waiting until one of them lays their eggs. The female cowbird then stalks that bird's nest until the bird leaves to take care of some other bird business. The cowbird then sneaks in and lays her own eggs in the other bird's nest. And here's where things get absolutely insane. Some birds have evolved the ability to recognise when a cowbird has placed her parasitic eggs on their nest, and they can reject the cowbird eggs by shoving them out of the nest so that they break on the forest floor below. But it's not always so easy. When a cowbird lays her eggs in another bird's nest, that bird doesn't really have any choice but to care for the eggs itself. This is because if the bird recognises the parasitic eggs and pushes them out of the nest, the cowbird will come back and destroy that bird's eggs in a harsh display of revenge. The cowbird is spiteful, mean, and downright lazy when it comes to their eggs. Number 7. Rude scavengers. Coyotes are scavengers. In fact, coyotes scavenge more than they actually kill, and they're not always very friendly about it. Coyotes are often considered to be opportunistic omnivores, meaning they eat pretty much anything that comes their way. What's really interesting is that a new study of coyote behaviour from New York State has found that only about 8% of deer carcasses that have been touched by coyotes have actually been killed by the animals themselves, with the remaining 92% of all adult dead deer being scavenged by coyotes after they were killed by a vehicle or some other kind of injury. Basically, coyotes scavenge as much as they possibly can and don't really do all the work stalking and hunting involves. But here's why coyotes are huge jerks. They have been known to steal food from smaller and weaker animals. If there is food to scavenge, you can bet the coyotes are going to be there to steal it. These aren't the biggest predators in the world, being slimmer and smaller than wolves, but they are definitely wily. Coyotes are also huge jerks to sheep and other livestock, as they frequently sneak their way underneath fences and into enclosed pens, when they then feast on the defenseless sheep who have nowhere to run. After all, you've probably heard the term coyote in a henhouse. This should say enough about just how rude coyotes can be to other animals. Number 6. Dog sticks up for human. A man in a small village in India was recently attacked by 3 lions and then saved by his pet dog, proving once again that dogs truly are man's best friend. This happened in Ambadi village, where apparently a local shepherd had been grazing his sheep when 3 lions appeared out of nowhere and decided that the sheep were easy prey, as we all know how big of jerks lions are to basically every other animal around. The sheep herder jumped into action and tried to save his sheep from the giant cats, but ended up needing a bit of saving himself. The dog began barking like crazy, which helped alert the nearby village people that something was going on. Within just a few seconds, so many people had come and gathered around the man, who was by the way still being attacked by the lions, and the big cats were forced to flee. It was a miracle that the man only suffered a few minor scratches on his arm. The dog didn't get hurt at all, and only about 3 sheep were lost during the attack. The lesson here is that lions are the kings of the jungle, and they think they can be jerks to whoever they want. Number 5. The wild boar crisis. It should come as absolutely no surprise that pigs are huge jerks. Pigs are stinky, ill-tempered, and incredibly intelligent. Perhaps that explains why there is supposedly a wild boar crisis unfolding right now in Canada. This is happening in the western provinces, where some people are saying that wild boars have begun wreaking havoc on the ecosystem and the indigenous animals. According to CBC News, this is happening primarily in Saskatchewan. There have been reports that wild boars escaped from farms in Alberta and are now the dominant animal species found throughout the prairies, and this is dangerous for many reasons. They have allegedly spread like wildfire and are at risk of causing at least $400 million in damages to farmland. Wild boars are also jerks to other animals. They have no problem killing the local species when they get in their way, ravaging other animals' natural habitats, and even sometimes charging at humans. Before anyone knows it, a bunch of rude wild boars will have taken over all of Western Canada. Number 4. Gulls are thieves. Seagulls are major jerks for one reason. They are straight up thieves. They have one animal in particular they really love to bully. Seagulls terrorize and steal food straight out of the mouths of pelicans. This is a shame because pelicans are very hard-working animals, and like most animals in the world, pelicans aren't really into sharing. But do seagulls care? No! Pelicans hunt by swimming in the water and scooping up fish wherever they can find them. They've gotten pretty good at it throughout the years, and seagulls use their proficiency at hunting to their advantage. Seagulls will actually soar above the water where pelicans are stationed, and the moment that the pelican hurls its massive body into the water and scoops a fish into its mouth, the seagull will swoop down and literally snatch the fish straight out of the pelican's face. Either that, or the seagull will watch the pelican until it messes up and makes a wrong move. If the pelican falters even a little bit and drops the fish into the water, the seagull will also come soaring down to scoop it out of the water before the pelican can recover it. This is why seagulls are often referred to as pirates of the seashore. They are rampant thieves, both on the east coast and on the west coast. And it's not just pelicans they steal from. If a seagull sees something it can eat, it will come flying down to steal it from anybody and everybody. Number 3. Monkey bullies. Monkeys are hardcore bullies. But what's really crazy about monkeys is that they actually bully each other. Monkeys are inherently jerks, and when it comes to a large group of them, they can often smell weakness just like kids on the playground, and they will bully their fellow monkeys endlessly. There is no better example of this than a story from 2008 when a monkey that was orphaned by the Jiaozhou City Zoo in China was bullied by other jerk monkeys so badly that the zoo had to give him a guard dog to keep the other rude animals away. In fact, the entire troop of monkeys hated the orphan so fiercely that if not for his guard dog, the zoo was scared that he would have been torn apart. According to a spokesman from the zoo, each time the orphaned monkey sensed that he was in danger, he would jump onto the back of the dog and hold on tight, while the dog would actually run up to the group of jerk monkeys and bark at them until they ran away. As you can imagine, this seriously disrupted the hierarchy of the monkeys. Some of the highest ranking monkeys in the organisation tried to get revenge by organising ambushes, but all of their ambushes failed because the dog would simply get loud and scare them away. It was an enormous soap opera unfolding at the zoo, and so far as we can gather, the monkey and the dog actually became best friends. Number 2. Elephant Mafia. There's no easy way to say it. Elephants are thugs, bullies, and very rude jerks. Specifically, elephants are thugs at the watering hole. Watering holes are supposed to be places where all the animals can come together to drink in peace. Hippos cool off in the water, crocodiles snatch a quick meal if something tasty gets too close, and elephants can quench their thirst. But according to researchers from the National Centre for Scientific Research from France, who recorded the comings and goings of elephants at the Hwang National Park in Zimbabwe, elephants run a kind of mafia at the watering hole. The team noted that herbivore species, such as buffalo and zebra, actually increase their drinking time on average by about 2 minutes when elephants are present at the watering hole. This could be for any number of reasons. Researchers suggest that the animals spend extra time drinking because they have to keep their eyes on the elephants, since they have a tendency to be spontaneously violent and unpredictable. Another theory is that the herbivores actually feel safer from predators when elephants are around because lions and other carnivores simply don't mess with the elephants. As of right now, nobody is entirely sure what the data means, but the general consensus is that elephants are a force to be reckoned with, and everyone treads a little lighter when they are around. Number 1. Another rude mountain lion. We've already talked a little bit today about how rude mountain lions can be, but this next story is about the bravery of a dog, the predatory nature of a large cat, and the poor Chihuahua Dachshund mix that lost an eye during an epic battle. According to the report in People magazine, this all went down in Colorado, when Miho and Winston slipped out of the house through an open doorway like a couple of sneaky teenagers. But the dogs got a lot more than they bargained for when a massive mountain lion pounced on Miho, the Chihuahua Dachshund mix, and had his teeth wrapped around the poor dog's head. I don't think I need to tell you that this is a jerk move. And Winston wasn't standing for it. Even though Winston was only slightly larger than Miho, he charged at the mountain lion with all he had, barking and barking until the mountain lion got so scared that it dropped Miho and ran away. 15-year-old Miho was rushed to the animal hospital, where he unfortunately lost his right eye. But if it hadn't been for Winston, Miho would have been dinner for the very rude lion. Number 10. Bomb in a squid. We're starting off today's video with a bang, literally. In China, a fishmonger discovered a bomb inside of a squid. And it wasn't just a defunct bomb. It was completely alive. The device was 8 inches long and must have been eaten by the 3-foot squid before it was captured. That would have been a devastating mess if the bomb went off, especially if it happened in the middle of a fish market. According to the local newspaper, while the fishmonger was cutting into the squid, his knife hit metal. He literally stabbed the bomb. Normally, this type of squid would have a diet primarily of small fish and prawns, not explosive devices. The fishmonger explained that the squid likely thought the bomb was a small fish floating down towards its mouth. Of course, Police arrived at the scene quickly to remove the bomb and carry out a controlled explosion. However, authorities said that because the bomb was so old, its exterior is rusted, and because it had been through so much between being eaten by the squid and then stabbed by the fishmonger, they were surprised it hadn't detonated already. Luckily, nobody was injured. Number 9. Hand in shark's stomach. Sometimes when you're on vacation, you lose things. Maybe you lose your wallet or your favourite sunglasses. But a Scottish tourist visiting Madagascar lost his hand inside the stomach of a shark. The Scottish tourist actually vanished while snorkeling near Madagascar, and after a long and futile search, the authorities found nothing. Then, a shark was discovered with a human hand inside its stomach. The conclusion was that the Scottish tourist was eaten by the shark, or at least part of his arm was eaten and the rest of him floated to the bottom of the ocean. This is obviously super tragic, and not the way anyone wants to end their vacation, but that's just what happens when you swim off the coast of Madagascar in an area frequently referred to as Shark Highway. The man's wife was called in to identify the wedding ring still on the man's finger, and yeah, it was him. However, it's still unclear whether he was killed by the shark or if he drowned and was later eaten. Since 2010, there have been at least 11 fatalities at this same spot, including a surfer who died after he had his leg bitten off by a shark. Number 8. Whale and golf ball. There are a lot of things you expect to find in the belly of a grey whale. A golf ball is not one of them. If you're a fan of Seinfeld, you likely remember the episode where George pretends to be a marine biologist to help a beached whale, only to pull a golf ball from its blowhole when it was put there by none other than Kramer. He says the classic line, "Hole in one." No? You haven't seen it? Okay. Well, this same kind of thing actually happened in real life. Unfortunately, the whale didn't make it. It washed ashore in Washington state, and after opening up its stomach, the authorities discovered a golf ball among other garbage inside its belly. However, it's unclear whether the mammal was killed by the golf ball or something else altogether. Nobody knows what happened. Hey, before we continue, I just wanted to say thanks for checking out the channel. If you like the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Number 7. Phone in the fish. A British businessman, Andrew Cheadle, lost his cell phone at the beach one day. This kind of thing happens all the time, but how the story ends is highly unlikely in usual situations. But afterwards, about a week later, a fisherman discovered it inside the belly of a giant cod. But this story gets even more interesting. Not only did the fisherman find the cell phone inside the belly of the 25-pound fish, but the cell phone was actually still working. This must have been the most resilient cell phone in the world. It was a Nokia 1600, and even though it wasn't in the greatest condition and it didn't smell very good, it still worked. In fact, the fisherman was able to use the SIM card from the phone to call the guy's girlfriend and tell her what happened. This sounds like the beginning of a plot for a romantic comedy. We have Mr. Cheadle's words. It was working, but it kept playing up, so I had to get the circuit board changed in the end. But now it's fine. I know it sounds like a fishy tale, but it's 100% true. According to what the fisherman told local news, cod are greedy fish and will gobble up just about anything. Cod are notorious for eating plastic cups, rocks, batteries, and everything else. It probably isn't even the first time a cod has swallowed somebody's cell phone. Number 6. An entire sea lion. Mako sharks are ferocious beasts. They're vicious and powerful predators, and also considered to be the fastest of all sharks. They're closely related to the great white shark, and these enormous fish can grow to be up to 12 feet long and weigh over 1,000 pounds. So I guess it's no surprise that they have quite the appetite too. It also was not really that shocking that while the shark scientist was dissecting the stomach of a Mako shark to unravel the mysteries of the aquatic food chain, she found a 200-pound sea lion. It was mostly intact, with just a flipper missing and a few bites to its body. Aside from the enormous and unfortunate sea lion, there were other bones inside the shark's stomach as well, yet to be identified. Mako sharks will eat just about anything, but are partial to squid, fish, seabirds, other sharks, and of course, sea lions. While this seems like the most incredible thing ever, that same shark scientist has dissected at least 200 shark stomachs, and has found lots of other surprising things, including pork steaks wrapped in paper, salads, and even a bullet from a gun. Number 5. Newspaper in a sunfish. If there's one place you expect to find a morning newspaper from 1883, it's in a time capsule from 1883. However, researchers from the Natural History Museum of London recently found a Sydney Morning Herald from Australia inside the stomach of a giant sunfish. This happened in 2016, with the newspaper being from January 1883. What's even more incredible is that the sunfish was captured in December 1882 and then stored in London at the museum. How exactly the newspaper got inside of the sunfish is a mystery, and nobody is quite sure what happened. Either somebody stuffed it in there, or the sunfish managed to eat someone from a month in the future. Then again, it's entirely possible that during the transportation of the fish from Australia to England, a newspaper ended up being dropped into its mouth. After all, the fish was so big that it had to be lifted by a crane. The fish was 8 feet long and 11 feet from fin to fin. I bet someone thought they were really clever. Number 4. A police badge. A fisherman in the Philippines caught a really big fish. He also caught a guard badge along with it. After cutting open an enormous grouper, he found the security guard badge inside its stomach. This immediately led locals to believe that the fish had somehow eaten a person. Wouldn't you assume that too? Even though a grouper isn't generally that dangerous, nobody saw any other way for the badge to have gotten inside the fish's stomach. Also, the man ended up having a nightmare of a time trying to sell his fish once locals found out about the badge, as they were afraid that the fish had eaten somebody and nobody wanted to eat a fish with human remains inside of it. It's a totally bizarre story, but hey, just another day in the rural Philippines. As for the owner of the security badge, he or she was never found or identified. Number 3. 900 coins in a turtle. Get your tissues out for this next one because you might just tear up a little. A turtle in Thailand swallowed hundreds of coins thrown into the water of her enclosure. The turtle was ironically named Omsin, which means piggy bank, and her enclosure was a popular tourist destination where people would come from all over the country to throw coins in the pond because they thought it would bring them good luck. Well, it wasn't very lucky for the turtle, who ate over 900 of the coins. It ended up needing emergency surgery because all that weight had actually cracked its shell. Omsin had swallowed an astounding 11 pounds of coins. And while the surgery was initially okay, she had complications days later, and the turtle had to have another surgery that she sadly never woke up from. It was super tragic, but at least the turtle had a chance to swim briefly without all those coins in her stomach right before she passed away. Obviously, this is more of a story about how purely ignorant people are when it comes to animals. What's the suffering of a turtle for a little bit of superstitious luck at the toss of a coin? This story should serve as a reminder that animals can mistake human artifacts like plastic and, or in this case, coins for food. Please don't litter, and don't throw coins into ponds or fountains with animals in it. Number 2. Salmon eggs. If you've never seen eggs inside of a fish, get ready to have your mind blown. What you're looking at now is the harvesting of hundreds and hundreds of salmon eggs done in a professional processing plant. It's actually quite simple. The belly is sliced open and then all the eggs are scooped out, and they will probably be used for some fancy caviar. Each roe sack of eggs, as they are referred to in salmon or trout, is scooped onto a sieve that separates the eggs from the membrane. The eggs are then washed and filtered, then drained. Later, they will be weighed, cured with salt and graded. Then before long they will be sitting on your kitchen table. If you like caviar, that is. What's interesting is that the eggs must be harvested immediately after the fish is killed. Otherwise, the fish's body will release a toxic chemical that essentially kills the eggs. It's a savage process, but still fascinating to see. Number 1. Baby duck. As usual, I have reserved the final story to be something a little less traumatic. Rather than gross old fish guts, let's talk about a woman in Indiana who recently caught a bass and received a little bit more than she was expecting. She looked inside the mouth of the fish and found herself staring at a duckling. That's right, it was an actual baby duck. If you weren't already aware, bass and other types of fish will actually snack on baby ducks. Unlike you or I, fish have absolutely no shame. They really don't mind eating ducks. And they certainly don't mind eating the innocent little babies. Did you know bass eat ducklings? The woman who discovered the bass and the duck was shocked, and she quickly released the fish back into the water. Unfortunately, the baby duck was not as lucky. Even before the woman had caught the fish, the duck had been a goner. And while everyone definitely feels bad for the adorable duck, that's just the circle of life. The ducks eat the bread, the fish eat the duck, and we eat the fish. Oh yes, and in case you were wondering, ducks also eat fish. So it really is a full circle. And not only will a bass eat a duckling, a bass will eat anything it can fit into its mouth, including snakes, mice, and even blackbirds. Number 10. The giant water bug. The giant water bug is one of the biggest, fiercest, and most startlingly dangerous bugs on the planet, known for hunting turtles, snakes, and even small ducks. The giant water bug is able to grow up to about 4 inches long. It's been nicknamed the toe biter because it has a tendency for biting people's feet and delivering an extremely painful injury, and there are about 150 species of them located all throughout the world. The bite isn't necessarily lethal, but it has been reported to be excruciatingly painful. And considering the giant water bug is found commonly through the Americas, this is one insect that you actually have a high likelihood of meeting. These bugs don't only live in the water, they also live on land and can fly around thanks to their gigantic wings. One of the more disturbing character traits of the giant water bug is that they play dead. These monsters have been caught pretending to be dead before suddenly springing to life and attacking humans with their incredibly sharp beak. And as if the bug weren't scary enough already, the female giant water bug sometimes lays her eggs on the back of her male partner, turning the male water bug into a walking nightmare with what appear to be pimples growing out of its back. But of course, these are just the egg sacs that it carries around with it until the young are ready to hatch. Number 9. The cow killer. The cow killer is one of the most fearsome insects in the world. It's known properly as the eastern velvet ant, even though it's not an ant in any way, shape or form. It's just that the female looks a lot like an ant. The cow killer, as it's commonly known, is in fact a type of wasp, and the female, which doesn't have any wings by the way, has a ferocious sting that some claim is powerful enough to kill a cow. You can probably figure out by now where the insect gets its name. In the case of humans, the sting from a cow killer is not enough to cause any serious damage, but it can be very painful. Cow killer wasps are quite a bit different from other wasps. First of all, they look strange. They are red and black and look velvety, unlike yellow and black normal wasps. The cow killer is also a solitary insect, more often seen buzzing around alone than inside of a nest with other wasps. And to make this insect even more frightening, it's a parasitic species to bumblebees. A female cow killer will lay her eggs inside of a bumblebee hive, and when the eggs hatch, the wasp's offspring will eat the bee larvae. It's an absolutely savage evolutionary trait, but one that has worked for the cow killer wasps so far. And if you're worried about running into some of these pesky bugs, you should be. They can be found all throughout fields, meadows, gardens, forests, and pretty much anywhere in North America. Have you ever been stung or bitten by a dangerous bug? Maybe some hornets or wasps? Tell me about it in the comments below. Then, remember to subscribe to Epic Wildlife for more intense videos. Number 8. Human botfly. The human botfly is the scariest bug on the planet. Botflies are gross, they're covered in hair, they're so big they look like bumblebees, and they have a frightening tendency to infect a human host. This is something known as meiosis, where the larvae of a botfly get transferred into human flesh through a fly bite or a mosquito bite. And be prepared for some fear, because this is the 4th most common travel skin disease reported, according to Women's Health magazine. It might not be seen very frequently in the United States, but it is a super common affliction in Latin American countries. And if you happen to be taking a trip to somewhere like Belize or Guatemala, you could end up returning home with some unwanted visitors burrowed inside of your skin. And that's dangerous for a whole heap of reasons. Once botfly eggs are inside of your body, the heat of your skin causes them to hatch. This can last from between 27 to 128 days, and the whole time you probably won't even know you're infected. You'll only see small pimples discharging a pretty gross fluid. These pimples are actually holes in your skin, so that the baby botflies can breathe. And even though botfly larvae don't really transmit diseases, it is still pretty gross. Some patients have reported feeling larvae moving underneath their skin. The only way to get rid of them is surgery. To rip your own flesh open and pull out what are essentially maggots growing inside of your body, or to cover up the wound with something like petroleum jelly to suffocate the botfly larvae, though then you have dead flies rotting beneath your flesh. Whichever way you look at it, botflies are horrifying. Number 7. House centipedes. There is an invasion going on in Canada that is scary enough to make people want to move. It's an invasion of house centipedes, incredibly dangerous and disgusting insects that can often be seen hanging around in Canadian homes, specifically inside the bathroom sink or in the drain of the shower. These centipedes are not only ugly, but they can also deliver a bite that is even more painful than a bee sting. And as if getting bitten wasn't enough, the house centipede can administer venom using its legs. The venom isn't enough to cause a fatal reaction, but if you have a couple of these centipedes crawling across your feet, you're going to have redness and swelling for days. But believe it or not, just having these centipedes in your house can be a nightmare, even if you don't get bit. This is because house centipedes are known for emitting a rank odor, and they can make an entire room stink. But don't worry, because since house centipedes are nocturnal, you'll probably only find them at night. Either that, or they'll find you. Number 6. Sydney funnel web spider. the Sydney funnel web spider can kill you. When talking legitimately dangerous bugs, the funnel web spider is definitely at the top of the list. These critters live in Australia, and they are feared by pretty much everyone. However, an interesting fact is that only male spiders have ever killed somebody with their bite. One of the reasons for this is that between November and April, male spiders will wander around at night trying to find a female inside of her burrow. They basically stalk the streets of Sydney looking for women's homes to break into. This results in the male spiders getting lost in suburban gardens and the occasional house. And of course, once this spider is in your house, it's only a matter of time until you have an accidental meeting with it. The venom from the Sydney funnel web spider is extremely toxic and attacks the nervous system of a human, meaning that a single bite can send you into shock and ultimately kill you. But of course, as long as you get to the hospital in time, you will probably be okay. The anti-venom was developed in 1981, and absolutely no deaths have occurred since it was introduced in Australia, seeing as it's always available at the major city hospitals and the regional hospitals. But even with the anti-venom, you can expect a significant amount of pain and a whole lot of discomfort. Number 5. Deer ticks. Deer ticks are very small bugs with a very large history of spreading disease. The connection between deer ticks and Lyme disease has turned these tiny monstrosities into some of the most hated bugs in the United States. And here is why they're so dangerous. Even though a deer tick is not born with Lyme disease, nor does a deer tick ever carry Lyme disease, they can absorb a certain bacterium into their system when they feed on an animal that is infected with said bacterium. The bacterium enters into the tick's gut and then travels into its salivary glands. Then, when a diseased tick bites a human, it injects them with the bacterium. This bacterium turns into Lyme disease inside a human host, and this is where all the danger starts. But there is some good news and some bad news when it comes to deer ticks and Lyme disease. When a tick first attaches to a human host, it generally takes up to 2 days for enough bacteria to transfer to get a person sick. However, ticks are sometimes undetectable for weeks. For example, a single mouse can have up to 100 deer ticks living in its fur. Just imagine how many you could have crawling around on your hairy legs or on your scalp. Number 4. Saddleback caterpillars. Saddleback caterpillars are some of the coolest looking insects ever. It's not clear how they got their amazing colour patterns, but at first glance, every saddleback caterpillar looks as though it's wearing some kind of sports jersey. But beyond the colourful exterior is a seriously dangerous bug that you need to look out for. The sting from this ordinary little caterpillar is strong enough to knock a grown person to the ground. This is dangerous because most people don't seem to understand how dangerous caterpillars are. Everyone is scared of bees and hornets, but nobody worries about the cute and cuddly caterpillars. But guess what? All you need to do is pick up the saddleback caterpillar to receive its sting. You don't even have to annoy it. Just touch it and the spines that stick out of its body will inject you with some pretty miserable pain. A rash will break out wherever the caterpillar's spines make contact with your skin, and the burning sensation can last for up to 2 days. In fact, the sting and the main poison are so intense that you may experience nausea for nearly half a day. Of course, the best way to avoid this unpleasant scenario is to not touch any caterpillars that you may find in your garden. Number 3. The tarantula hawk. The tarantula hawk is not a bird. It's not a tarantula either. It's a type of wasp with a sting that can make the toughest person cry. Some have described the pain of the tarantula hawk's sting as being shocked with electricity. When the wasp stings a person, all they have to do is lay on the ground and start screaming. Now, the tarantula hawk grows to about 4 inches in length, making it absolutely enormous for a wasp. There are about 133 known specimens of them, distributed throughout the Western Hemisphere. The tarantula hawk got its name for one very simple reason. It hunts tarantulas. It also hunts tarantulas far larger than itself. It's not every day that you see an insect so dangerous that spiders literally flee like cowards at the sight of it. And yet, tarantula hawks truly are monsters. Even though they get their nutrition from nectar, they will battle spiders as a way to provide food for their babies. The female tarantula hawk will stab a spider multiple times and inject it with her venom, keeping the spider alive but completely paralysed. The wasp then drags the spider into her own nest and lays an egg inside of the spider's body. Later on, the baby wasp hatches and eats the spider from the inside out. But in order to be this kind of apex predator, you better have a powerful sting. And the tarantula hawk does. According to the Natural History Museum, the tarantula hawk has the second most painful sting in the entire world. beaten only by the legendary bullet ant. It probably won't kill you, but you'll definitely wish you were dead. Number 2. The Deathstalker. The Deathstalker scorpion is considered by some to be the deadliest scorpion in the entire world. This little bug is filled with painful venom that can cause a person to become paralyzed and in great pain. The Deathstalker typically uses its potent venom for hunting ordinary bugs like crickets, but if you happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, you could find yourself in some hot water. This is because the Deathstalker scorpion hides underneath rocks most of its life, waiting for crickets and other small bugs to get near it. If you happen to put your hand down in front of the Deathstalker scorpion, it will probably sting you and fill you with venom. After being stung by a Deathstalker, you will have a whole lot of neurotoxins flowing through your body. You could go into an anaphylactic shock, your muscles could contract and cause a seizure, and if you don't receive immediate medical attention, there is the possibility that you'll die painfully while screaming. The only good news is that these types of scorpions are found typically in the deserts of Africa, India and Central Asia, where most people don't dare to travel. Number 1. Fire ants. One of the most common pests in the state of Louisiana is the fire ant. These bugs are smart. They live in massive colonies. They can be found in just about anyone's lawn, and if you're not careful, they could eat you alive. When 13-year-old Patrick Dodson was doing yard work at home on a Sunday afternoon, he found himself covered in hundreds of ants after a bag of mulch ripped open and the ants were sprinkled all over his body. According to Fox News, the ants began biting Patrick immediately. However, it wasn't until about 10 minutes later after he had run inside of his house that he began to feel something wasn't right. Patrick ended up having his entire face flush, his lips and nose swelled up, and eventually he passed out. An ambulance had to be called to get the boy to the emergency room, as the venom from the fire ants shut his body down. Doctors working at the Baton Rouge General Medical Center had to give the boy intravenous fluids to flush the venom out of his system. And it was a struggle to keep the boy alive as his blood pressure continued to drop. Even more alarming is that Patrick's heart stopped beating 2 times while he was at the hospital. In the end, Patrick was very lucky to survive the night at the hospital, with all the fire ant venom coursing through his veins. But he did make a full recovery. The moral of the story here is that fire ants are extremely dangerous. Number 10. The Black Sea Devil Anglerfish. By far one of the strangest creatures ever found is the Black Sea Devil Anglerfish. This thing is an unbelievable monster. It's hard to believe it actually exists. Researchers at California's Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute recently spotted one of these extremely creepy fish and captured it on video for the very first time. According to USA Today, the anglerfish was caught on video while scientists were exploring the Monterey Canyon, a massive canyon in the Pacific Ocean so big it could rival even the Grand Canyon. You might be familiar with the anglerfish. You know, the one from Finding Nemo that Marlin and Dory run into while in the dark abyss. It has a dangling flashlight appendage that hangs off its face, which helps it to lure prey directly into its giant gaping mouths. These anglerfish are also notorious for being very ugly and living very deep in the ocean. The most recent discovery came at 1900 feet below the surface of the water, and it was the first time that a living specimen was filmed physically swimming. There have been some specimens that have shown up on a shore or have been scooped into a fisherman's net, but they've always been dead. These fish are pretty elusive, and they have some of the scariest teeth you've ever seen on an animal, and it's safe to say that they are positively evil and belong exactly where they are in the darkness of the ocean. Number 9. John Smith and the Mermaid. When it comes to the strangest creatures ever discovered, a mermaid definitely tops the list. This is the story of John Smith and the Mermaid. John Smith might be known mostly for his famous rescue of Pocahontas, but apparently he also had an otherworldly encounter with a mermaid in 1614. At least, according to the Smithsonian magazine he did. John Smith allegedly spotted a woman with green hair swimming in the water. The woman was extremely attractive up top, but she had the tail of a fish, and she swam away before John Smith could take another look. What's really surprising is that this is not the only mermaid sighting that happened back in the 1600s. Sailors from all over the world reported bumping into mermaids. Soon, mermaid mania swept all throughout colonial Europe. However, the truth is likely a little more disappointing. Most scientists are confident that what John Smith and the other sailors saw swimming beside their vessels were actually just manatees. It's kind of strange to imagine a manatee looking like a beautiful woman, but keep in mind that these sailors were having a pretty tough time stuck on their boats for months and months. It's highly possible that rather than discovering a new breed of fish and human hybrid, the scurvy-stricken sailors simply saw manatees playing beside their boats and let their imaginations make up the rest. What do you think? Are mermaids real? Number 8. The Loch Ness Monster. Gary Campbell is the man who apparently has seen the Loch Ness Monster, and he's seen it more than once. Gary is also the guy who runs the official Loch Ness Monster Sightings Registry in Inverness, Scotland. He knows every single sighting of the Loch Ness Monster, and according to a recent interview with Gary himself, he too has witnessed Nessie. According to the man who knows more about the Loch Ness Monster than anyone, there isn't actually a whole lot that is known about the monster beside it likes to make random appearances. Contradictory, right? First of all, he doesn't know whether the Loch Ness Monster is a he or a she, even though a lot of people in Scotland automatically assume it's a she. There are apparently 1400 years of history in which Nessie has been spotted by the public, and yet this is one strange creature that has never actually been found. Gary even confessed that he witnessed the monster over 20 years ago, but all he saw was a small black hump sticking out the water. Even though Gary is pretty convinced, he very well could have just seen a big log. The devastating truth here is that even someone who has studied the Loch Ness Monster for 20 years has actually never found it. When it comes down to cold hard facts, Nessie is the strangest, unfindable creature ever. Do you think Gary really saw the famous Nessie? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 7. The weird sea cucumber. Sea cucumbers are some of the nastiest creatures ever found living in the ocean. These chubby tubes of atrocities slink around the ocean floor and poop like crazy. If you don't want to be grossed out, I highly suggest you skip ahead to the next story. Some newly discovered information about sea cucumbers has shed some light on just how much these ugly monsters of the deep can relieve themselves each and every year. According to a new study published in the scientific journal Coral Reefs, sea cucumbers are able to collectively poop around 70,000 tons of sandy excrement each and every year. Keep in mind though, this is the collective poop of a large group of sea cucumbers. This study counted about 3 million sea cucumbers living in an isolated lagoon near the end of Australia's Great Barrier Reef. The area is only about 7.3 square miles, and yet there are 3 million of these little poop machines living there. Together, they poop the equivalent mass of 5 Eiffel Towers every year. But one of the reasons why this is such an interesting animal discovery is because sea cucumbers are just one weird critter. It takes hundreds of other animals to clean and recycle that poop, who then make their own poop. The circle of life can truly be a bit disgusting. Number 6. Stranded whale. Whales getting stranded on the shore is a pretty rare occurrence, but something that does happen, and when it does it's quite sad. But when a whale was stranded just recently in Florida, it turned out to be a completely new species of whale, and one that is already in danger of going extinct. This was one of the most bizarre animal discoveries in recent memory. The whale that washed up in the Florida Everglades was 38 feet long, and it was found just rotting away on the shore with a giant piece of plastic inside its belly. It was a type of baleen whale, similar to a humpback whale or a blue whale, and it turned out to be a whole new subspecies known as the Rice's whale, which apparently live in the Gulf of Mexico. But here's where things get really shocking. According to new information published in the journal Marine Mammal Science, there are less than 100 members of the Rice's whale currently alive on our planet. They are critically endangered, and now we have to worry about them washing up dead on our beaches. This was probably one of the saddest animal discoveries in the last 5 years. Number 5. Freaky spiders. The most terrifying discovery of the century happened in an Australian home when hundreds upon hundreds of cannibalistic spiders invaded the bedroom of an unsuspecting teenager. This happened in Sydney, a busy city where humans are supposed to be kept safe from 8-legged freaks. According to the pictures posted online by a friend of the family, the homeowner walked into her daughter's room to find hundreds of huge and creepy house guests crawling across the ceiling and spazzing out in the upper corners. These were baby huntsman spiders, some of the largest and most common arachnids in Australia. These critters can grow to be more than 5 inches long, and their population explodes in the summer. Sometimes they find their way into people's homes, and that's what probably happened here. To make things worse, but kind of better, they were cannibals. The spiders were scrambling to feast on one another, which meant their numbers quickly diminished, but in the meantime there was a cannibal party of huge spiders going on in this poor girl's bedroom. Number 4. Ancient bugs. Speaking of things that creep and crawl, a rare fossilized assassin bug has recently been discovered, and it dates back 50 million years. Researchers with the University of Illinois recently published their findings on this incredible fossil, saying that this taxonomic group of insects is actually twice as old as scientists previously thought. What's really amazing about this hardened assassin bug is that the petrified specimen was completely intact, and this almost never happens. This new fossil was discovered in an area rich with sedimentary deposits in Colorado by a fossil hunter. When the man picked up the rock, it actually split in half, slicing the bug into two perfect specimens locked inside of the stone, making it one of the most perfect fossils ever found. And what's truly remarkable about bug fossils is that we can clearly see that they have not changed very much since they first evolved into their perfect forms. Even though this fossil dates back 50 million years ago, we can see that assassin bugs have barely diversified or changed since then. Number 3. Rare dragon eggs. Some rare dragon eggs have just started hatching in western Slovenia. Of course, these aren't real dragons like you might see in Game of Thrones. They definitely don't breathe fire. Instead, these are a species of blind and aquatic salamanders, known as olms, but they are nicknamed dragons because they have extremely long and slender bodies that make them look like the mythical Chinese dragons. Nonetheless, these newly hatched dragon eggs are a pretty big deal in the scientific community. This is because olms only lay eggs once or twice every 10 years, even though they have a ridiculously long lifespan of up to 100 years. Researchers working in the Slovenian cave recently found between 50 and 60 of the eggs, and now they've started hatching. It's also exciting because out of every 500 eggs laid by olms, only an average of 2 go on to hatch and actually survive. Now, scientists will be keeping an eye on the newly hatched dragons to try and learn more about this incredibly rare species, which by the way primarily live far from humans, deep in the dark recesses of European caves. Number 2. An ugly beast. A hideous beast was found in Texas a few years ago, and people still think it's a chupacabra. The creature was originally found by a rancher living in Fort Hood, slightly south from Fort Worth. The rancher discovered the creature still alive inside of his barn, only to have it shot by an animal control officer who showed up to his call. According to the local witnesses, the animal was hairless and ugly, real ugly. When photos of the beast turned up online, everyone was raving that it was a chupacabra, a horrifying monster that allegedly appeared in Puerto Rico in 1995. Of course, no hard evidence has ever been found that the chupacabra really exists, which is why this strange creature excited people so much. Even the farmer who originally found the beast was kind of excited, and all the hype convinced authorities to take DNA samples and try to work out what kind of monster this really was. Unfortunately, the DNA tests have yet to be revealed. Will this thing turn out to be a wolf, a dog, or really an unidentified monster never seen by scientists? Number 1. Gelatinous monster. Scientists working with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration have recently discovered a new and very strange gelatinous type of monster living deep in the sea. This was reported in Science Alert, and it was the first discovery of its kind ever to be made only by using video footage. The reason this is so interesting is that most species need to be studied by researchers in a physical setting, but this weird blob monster was found by a remotely operated vehicle off the coast of Puerto Rico. It was less than 1 millimeter in length, and scientists were not able to get a sample of it to the surface to study it. Instead, they had to identify it by using the high-resolution video. So far as we know, the creature was named D. sparksay, and it's a strange type of ctenophore organism with a body like a balloon and 2 long tentacles trailing behind it. The research team managed to film 3 individuals at a depth of around 12,000 feet below the surface, or 2.5 miles deep. Thanks for watching. What's the creepiest creature you've ever found? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and be sure to subscribe for even more amazing videos. See you next time. Bye!